Alright guys, here we are, part 4 of the SIG 522 trigger removal and installation. Okay, now I'm going to have to make some statements right off the bat. I kind of started this video, or the work on my gun, earlier this morning, late morning, early afternoon, and it is now late evening. Between trying to make the videos, again, when I made the first video, kind of the part 1, everything was in pieces, and kind of to show you the pieces and what I was going to be taking out in part 2. So I threw the gun back together and started with part 2, just disassembling, removing all the parts, including the hammer, the trigger, and let's see the safety, right? So I have, the video is not the best sometimes. I noticed watching back some of the videos, some of the things are not quite just in the view, they're just out of view. So I still think it's definitely going to be plenty to help you. Like I said, I looked over the internet and couldn't find any videos on YouTube or anywhere taking out the trigger, safety, and hammer out of the 522. So, and all these lowers on the 522 are the same, with the exception you may have a buttstock on the back. So, a few things I learned while doing this, which is going to help you a lot, let me tell you. With a lot to do with installation, reinstalling these parts. A few with disassembly, but I showed you. But a lot of them with disassembly, with reassembling everything. So, right off the bat, the hammer has to go in first, and I'm going to talk about this spring now. This is one of the things I didn't really think a lot about when it came to reassembling this thing. And this thing, trying not to curse or nothing, but can be a son of a gun. Okay, it can be a you know what. You guys can fill in the explicits, but I finally found out the reason why. Now, something I wanted to make a point of that I wanted to show you not to do kind of led me into something else, because I was having a hard time getting this back in. And the fourth time now making this part 4 video, I finally figured it out. So the point I was going to make is that if you can see here, this has a loop, this spring on the back here. Now I'm going to turn my flash back on so we got some light. This has that loop right here, okay? And it has to be against the back side of the hammer. Like that, it hits it, and that's when your hammer comes back, gives you that spring tension. Now, during the cleaning or just disassembling this, you might have done a 360 or 180 or whatever, and it may now be like that. So you may go to put these arms in and install this, and you'll have no issue like that. Put it right back in, and then you'll notice you won't have any spring tension on it. So definitely make sure that you rotate this again counterclockwise with the hammer facing forward, so that that loop right there, again, is against the back of the hammer. Now, if you can see here, this is where I was having the issue. Everything looks to be fine for the most part. Everything's straight on there, and no major issues. But here's the problem. If you can notice, the cylinder here is not lined up or centered in the springs. What happens between rotating this around and getting it just right, okay, this gets caught or kind of put in the wrong spot, and that makes this a nightmare. So how do we get it re-centered? You see this notch right here? Try to get it. If you follow down from the top, the front part of the hammer, follow down, there's these little notches right here. Try to get them on this piece right here. When you spin this down, and make sure again that you have it so that loop's going to come up and beat where you want it to be, okay? Which is against the hammer right there. But what you need to do now is take the spring and lift it, each one separately, bring it past this, okay? So the way to do that is, again, have your spring where you want it, spin it counterclockwise, so that you have that touching right there. Okay? And all you need to do is just take that like that. So you might be at a point where it's just resting like that, and I guess the spring seems like it's right. But what you need to do is, if it's not centered, you need to take one of the coils and take it and move it over that piece. Get it away from there so that you're centered back up. So take that and just do that. So the best way I can show you to do this is push this, make sure that your loop is against the back of the hammer. Alright. As soon as you got that, hold it like this. And then just take it, the coils, and move them past that piece. So now it's just hanging. It should just be hanging on there, like that. Still having the loop in the right spot, but having this here and not above these. So these notches here, again, that spring likes to find its way somehow, just from rotating it, likes to find its way up there. And just doing a circle, it kind of like works like a screw. It puts itself back up on it. So if you do not do that and try to put this back in, I'm telling you now, you're in for the fight of your life. So again, make sure that loop, can't say it enough, it'll help you out. Won't have to do it 10 times. Make sure that loop right there is against the back of the hammer. Rotate it so that it is, and then hold it like this. And then just take that coil and bring it below those notches. Like that. So it's hanging. So if you got this, so it's hitting the back where it should, and you can center that spring, no problem. You got all kinds of play in the world. And this top, when you're holding the hammer straight up and down, these notches are up here and the spring is well below them. You're good to go. And now you can put this thing right on in. So how to do it now. Take your thumb and put it, show you how I did that again. Put it between, put your your middle finger on the top part of the hammer. Don't put it too low or it's going to mess you up. Put it on the top part of the hammer and have your thumb like that between the coils. That's going to make a lot of sense in just a minute here. So, okay, we got it like that, and now we're going to put it in. Now, I told you all these pins came out from the left, came off from the right side. For the video, I'm going to put it in from the left so you can see, and you can do the same, whatever works for you. But remembering that this pin has a cutout in it right on the one side, and that cutout again is for this arm to hook around on the left side of the gun here. So if you're putting it from the left to the right, just make sure you put the side that doesn't have the cutout in first. So what we're going to do now, you got these two cutouts down here, or depressions, where the keepers are for the springs, the arms. Okay, so you're going to put that in kind of like a sweeping motion, put them right where they should be, and then you're going to kind of push down with your thumb while pulling back with the hammer. And that cylinder will go like that, right into position for you, and line right up. So now that is, I'm going to slip the pin in. The hardest thing to do is hold this with one hand, make sure it's lined up, and have it on video. So there we go. And now you just got to kind of wiggle it and kind of move it around till that other one goes in. So I'm just going to kind of flip it real quick, just so we can see why this one's not quite lined up. And all that's going to take is just depressing this a little bit, and now it's lined up. So there you go. That's it. Hammer's back in. Sorry that took so long to explain that, but I probably spent a good half an hour trying to figure out why everything seemed right, but it was so hard to go back in. And I would change it up and do something, and it would go right in. Then I'd go to make the video, and it wouldn't go back in. So it was like, what the heck is going on here? I finally figured out that those notches, the spring coil was above those notches and not really centered in that cylinder. So now that it is, make sure that it's seated where it's supposed to be. Okay, and you can test it out. It's fully functional, no problems. So there we go, hammer's in. Now keeping that in mind, you're going to want to make sure that this part of the pin on the left side is pushed in just a little bit more. I'm sorry, no, you're going to want to make sure that makes no sense, that the right pin on the right side is pushed this way just a little bit more. And what that's going to do, or lined up so that that cutout down there on that pin, this arm has a place to go. You'll know immediately if it doesn't, because it won't really be able to go in there. So that's the next thing we're going to put in, is this arm. And it is not going to be in perfectly tight when you put it in, but as soon as you get the trigger in and stuff and start bending up on it and getting it where it needs to be, it will. So you're going to take that arm and put it down in there like that, right on that pin, and just kind of push it down. And I think just like that. Okay? Yep, that's right. Okay, just making sure I have mine in all the way. So the arm's just going to sit down there in the bottom for now, like that. And what we're going to do is take this pin and push it back in flush, and that'll kind of lock that arm from going too far. Alright, so now we got the hammer in and the arm in. The next step is for our trigger. So I got mine all back together. I did do my polishing on it that I wanted to, on the Sear and stuff, and some of the pieces and the pins, so that's how I wanted to do mine, and I did it. And I had that one part, I think the second part of the video, yeah, that I showed you, or the third part after the disassembly, how to take this trigger all the way apart. So now we're going to put the spring on the trigger, which goes on this side. Now again, you have to have this pin through this assembly, and we're looking at the trigger this way. It's going to go off this direction, so the bigger part of the pin is going to be on the right side. And that's so the trigger, or the spring here, can go on that. Now, knowing that, we're going to do it this way. And the spring orientation is so that that arm is pointed up, and the smallest part is going to go in on the trigger. So we'll put that on the pin, and then let it sit right in its spot there. Okay, so now it looks like something like that. Trying to give you as many views as I can. And that's in. Alright, now it's going to be a little loose until you get it in there, but really it's not too bad. Now the more fun begins here. When you put the trigger in, you're going to have to rock back on the Sear here. You're going to have to take the front of the Sear and push, basically push in on it like that, on that spring, because in the bottom of the lower receiver, you see how this has that little notch there. That's going to go into that space, so if you don't press back on the Sear, the trigger is not going to go all the way down. So we're going to put the trigger in, start bringing it down. Now as you do that, you push in on that Sear. Push in on it. So I'll do that again real quick. Okay? Just so everybody gets it. Again, the Sear is right in the front here, and it pushes right in. Worrying about this isn't, you don't have to worry about that. That can kind of do what it wants. So you want to put your thumb behind there, and your middle finger, whatever finger you feel like using, and push on that Sear. Now you don't have to push on it until you get it into place. As soon as you get the trigger as far as it'll go, push that Sear in, and it'll drop into place and click. So let me put my spring back on. So I've taken this thing apart and back together and apart, I mean, a million times today, so now I'm kind of a self-proclaimed expert on this part of it, but I don't think I'll be doing it again anytime soon. So here we go again. We're going to put the trigger down into it, and then you'll see it'll stop. Push the Sear in. Okay. You're gonna have to go back. See, the first time I did it, no problem. And again, go in with it with the Sear depressed, and hold back on something like this. Put your thumb behind this piece, and push back on the Sear so that piece is back. So now that we're going in here again, it's gonna have space for that notch to go. So we'll put it in. And there we go. It goes down all the way. And you'll know if your trigger's not in all the way because nothing will really fit just right. So, alright, that's in. And you'll know it's not in all the way because I'll tell you what now, the cylinder won't line up. You won't be able to get the pin in. So if the pin doesn't go in and it's not quite lined up, it's because you didn't squeeze the sear in for that notch down here to go into the back side of the trigger. So now the pin, again, trigger pin has a notch in it too. That's going to be on the left side of the gun. And we'll just, again, put that right on in. And it's all the way in. So now we got our hammer in, our trigger in, the arm that puts pressure not only on the trigger pin here, but the safety on this side. So that's going to be the last step, putting the safety in. And this was the part that I was most kind of cautious about, and it's really not, it's probably the easiest. So doing this now, the first thing you're going to want to pay attention to is the arm here on this spring. And that's just as easy as taking something right off the bat and depressing it all the way. I'm actually going to flip this around so it's easier to see now on this side. You're going to want to, okay, hold back on the trigger just a little bit. That'll kind of help that spring go down a little bit, but just for now. And I recommend putting something kind of flat on the top part of the spring. Don't try to grab it right here. And you see now how that clears the hole as we go down further. Alright, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to get the safety and kind of have it how it should be, with these little indentations facing upward. And make sure I got this somewhat on video here. We're going to press down again on the spring. Tell you what, it's not fun to make a video, watch the video, and work. Push down on the spring, and just stick that in there just a little bit. Now there you go. Leave it like that just for a minute. And now that spring is below the safety arm, the arm of that from that trigger goes down and is underneath of this. So now what you can do, I'm going to work it back away this way again, is start pushing the safety in like that. All the way over, but if you go too far, we're going to have to get that arm up now. So kind of take it back just a little bit. Again, that spring puts a lot of tension on it, so I'm going to have to actually depress it again a little bit to go backwards. So again, just press down on that spring. And again, you're going to do this your own way, so make life easier on you. You'll find your own ways to do it, but I'm hoping this video will definitely help somebody somewhere along the point, so it wasn't all in vain here. So now I got enough room to bring this arm up. I'm actually going to give myself a little more room, so I'm going to bring this back a little bit more. Alright, now the arm. How the heck we're going to do that is, I got a long screwdriver. I'm going to pick the arm up from in between the hammer and the trigger. I'm just going to pick, it comes right up. I'm going to lift it up like that. And you can see from the side here that it, of course mine, from messing with it so much, is it came out of its spot. But again, if that happens, just move that pin over a little bit and drop the thing right back into place. Again, it's not that big of a deal. Like I said, out of all the guns I've worked on, this thing seems to be the most fun out of all of them. And you may find that it goes completely easy for you, and I hope it does. I hope it goes easier for you than it did for me. I said it wasn't hard, but I've done it 1,500 times today, so now I'm just going to kind of push that arm back down in place till I got the pin lined up with it. There we go. And that's exactly where I want it. Now, again, going back to it again, just lift the arm up, take something like I'm using an Allen key right now, just kind of lift it up from between the the trigger here and that, and you're going to see it's going to come up through the hole. You're going to see it come up like that. Now with that being there, take something to hold it up for yourself and just kind of hold it there right now. Now that that's being held, I'm going to take my flat-headed screwdriver here and get it underneath the arm, kind of like when we started. So now what I got going on is I got the arm up, and I got just this screwdriver here holding it up. I'm going to lift up on it. I'm just going to kind of put the gun like this, be ready to push on the safety. I'm going to lift it up and get the safety moving here. Now again, that spring on the trigger kind of starts to be a problem, but you just got to kind of press it again and go back and work a little further with it. Twisting it helps work against it. So there we go. Now what I'm going to do is kind of hold it, give it pressure. Now the arm is just barely resting on top of the safety. What I'm going to do is that spring's now moved over. And I told you this part you actually do have to kind of go back and forth. That's how I've done it every time. Push that spring back down in there. As soon as I push that spring down, the safety almost came all the way through. Okay, so now the arm is just barely missing from going on top of its home. So now I'll go back, lift the arm back up again with the screwdriver. Show you that again. I'm not lifting up real hard. I'm really not forcing it or giving it a whole lot of pressure, but oh, there we go. Now we're home free. Now the arm is exactly where it should be, so when I push the safety, it locks on fire, on safe, and then fire. So it's acting as it should. And something else to keep in mind, if you can see on the safety, on right here on this pin, or the cylinder I call it, the safety arm cylinder, there's that cutout or detent in it. Cutout in it right there. You may think that that arm or that spring wants to be underneath it. It doesn't. That is for part of the trigger assembly. So keep the arm all the way against the wall, the right side wall of the frame or the lower. So now that we have that done, that's really it, guys. I mean, all it's left to do is take the other arm over here, put it back on, and I'll tap the pin in. And that's it. Don't really need to show you how to do that. That's kind of self-explanatory, so I guess I'll just sit down here for a second and talk about it for a minute, and that's it. Now, we'll test it again the way that I do, and you should test your safety for function. So using the right side, since that's still active, I'll put it on safe like that, and your trigger should not work at all. Okay, now I'll put it on fire, and even though the hammer is still up, so we're not going to have to worry about that slapping anything. Well, I'll tell you right off the bat, that feels pretty good. That feels a heck of a lot better than it did. So, I'm happy. Mission successful for me and my venture today. Kind of the reason for starting this. And again, now that all that arm's in there and holding tension on everything, and again, the arm's going to be on top of the safety, but it's got to be underneath the trigger pin, under this. It cannot be, the arm cannot come from here and go over top. Try to make it easier. Just some main points to keep here. The arm starts here, loops around, and you do not want it to be over top of this. You want it to be over top and then under the trigger pin and then back over top the safety. So, and again, now that that's there, you're not going to be able to push that trigger pin out at all, or hammer or any of that. So really that arm was the key, and that's where I started off with this today, thinking, well, how does this all come out? I thought maybe I could just push this out and I'm not worried about that arm, worry about it later, and then just sneak the trigger out. But nope, the safety had to come out, and I said I took the hammer out. So now I'm going to do another little test. Put it back on safe for a second, and lock the sear in, or the hammer to the sear, because I did polish it, and it does engage, so that's good. And again, the safety works good. Now I'm going to do a little test here and go to get a fire and test out. Again, that's how I do it. Kind of cut it off. Doesn't hurt that bad. Doesn't hurt really at all. Kind of cut the hammer from hitting the frame, smacking it. And I'll tell you what, guys, I polished that and it feels good. I mean, that breaks clean, and that not a lot, man. You just put a little bit of pressure on that trigger right there, and you can watch in the video. I just put my finger on it, pull back a little bit more. Waiting to see where it's going to break. There it goes. And it engages just fine. It's not slipping off. If you have that happen where it won't lock into the sear, you got major issues. So again, when you're polishing the sear and stuff like that, you got to take caution and really not get too crazy taking too much off. But I'll tell you what, guys, I'm happy with that. So again, I know this wasn't, hopefully it was probably somewhat of a painful video, and hoping that some of the instruction weren't super painful or less, the least painful as possible for you to watch and listen to. Again, making videos isn't my strong point, but tinkering with guns and taking things apart and putting it back together is. So it's just a matter of translating that into a video and trying to get a little better at that. So alright, guys, this is the end of it. I'm going to go ahead and tap that pin back in there. I'm sure you guys would figure that out. If you came this far with it, putting that pin in is not going to be a problem for you. I'm not going to make you watch me do it. I kind of do it over there on a block of wood where I got some more room and a more solid surface to hit on. This is a metal toolbox, so it doesn't make life real easy for that. And I do recommend, if you're going to be taking this pin out, you want to have yourself, like again, a good block of wood, a cutting board or something on a solid surface, because if you try to hammer down on that pin, if you got any give on the surface, like you're on a carpet or something, it's not going to come out real easily. You just need to be on a solid surface. So, all right, guys, I hope this 4-part series on the 522, the complete, I guess I'll call it the complete lower disassembly, and cleaning and trigger mod, or just trigger polishing and stuff, was worth watching and helped you. Even if you only watched 2 or 3 minutes of each video, that was kind of mission accomplished for me then, I guess. That's all I was trying to do. So, alright, guys, have fun shooting it, have fun at the range, and please leave your comments. I don't care if they're bad or good. I'm not easily offended, so I welcome all of them. Alright, guys, catch you later.